Today, we're going to tackle a huge question, one that feels, well, more urgent than ever. Is war just a permanent part of the human story, or is it possible that one day it could become obsolete? Okay, let's get into it. When you look at the world today, it is really, really easy to be cynical. The daily news can feel like this constant drumbeat of conflict, and it reinforces a pretty grim view of human nature. It just feels like we are stuck on a loop, right? And look, this is not a new feeling. This question from the Quran, it captures this timeless anxiety we have about our own capacity for violence. It's basically the lament of the angels, looking down at humanity and seeing only this potential for bloodshed. But what if that's not the whole picture? So first, let's just go head-to-head with this idea of endless war. Because the core of the problem, it might just be a matter of perspective. Think about it. If we only look at this one little frame of history, our lifetime, maybe the last decade, it's so easy to conclude that conflict is just our destiny. It's a snapshot. And yeah, right now that snapshot can look pretty bleak. But here's the thing. History isn't a snapshot. It's a feature film. And that gets us to the absolute central idea of this explainer. To see the real story, we have to zoom out. I mean, way, way out. The philosopher Jaudat Said had this incredible idea that this kind of knowledge is a form of psychological health. It gives you a kind of reasoned optimism. And it's not based on wishful thinking, but on actual evidence. It's all about seeing that long ascending arc, not just getting lost in the dips and valleys of the daily news. And this visualizes that arc perfectly. For most of human history, our basic unit was a tiny nomadic band. And pretty much everyone outside that circle, an enemy. But over thousands of years, something amazing happened. Those warring bands came together to form tribes. Then those warring tribes formed city-states. And then those city-states became nations. At every single step, the circle of who we trust, who we cooperate with, has gotten bigger. The scale of peace has consistently grown. All right, so let's look at a really solid example of this. One that feels almost impossible from where we stand today. The birth of the modern nation. This is such a powerful analogy. Seriously, try to imagine you're a Prussian nobleman around, say, 1860. The idea that Prussia and Bavaria and dozens of other rival German states would one day form a single peaceful country, well, it would have sounded absolutely insane. Now, what's so fascinating is that this whole process wasn't smooth or clean. Not at all. It was messy, it was violent. I mean, there were major wars right up until the very moment of unification. And then, poof, they just stopped. The internal wars, the ones that had defined the region for centuries, they just ceased. And that's the crucial point, this radical transformation. A world of constant rivalry, of Prussians versus Bavarians, became a world where a war between them wasn't just unlikely, it became literally unthinkable. A completely new, larger identity was forged, and it was forged directly out of conflict. Okay, so now let's scale that idea up to what is probably the most dramatic example of this trend in all of modern history. Just take a second and actually picture this. The entire continent is in ruins. It has ripped itself to shreds twice in a single generation. We're talking tens of millions dead. The level of hatred, the devastation, it's almost impossible for us to even comprehend. So imagine you're standing in the rubble of Berlin or London in 1945, and you suggest that within their lifetimes, France and Germany would bind their economies together, share sovereignty, and sit side by side in a common parliament. You would have been laughed out of the room, called a lunatic. It was pure fantasy. And yet, that is exactly what happened. The project that would eventually become the European Union was deliberately designed to achieve the impossible. Its very first goal was to take the engines of war, coal and steel, and literally fuse them together. Why? To make another European war materially impossible. It was an incredibly practical solution to a problem that had plagued them for centuries. So, what does this whole historical arc tell us about who we are, about human nature, and where we might be headed? This is where history starts to bump up against philosophy. For centuries, this has been the debate. Are we, like Thomas Hobbes argued, just fundamentally brutish creatures who need a powerful ruler to stop us from destroying each other? Or, as thinkers like Locke and Kant believed, is our nature actually governed by reason, and society is just a tool we build to better protect our rights and our potential? Well, when you zoom out, history seems to be leaning toward that more optimistic view. Let's go all the way back to that first question from the angels. In the Quranic story, God's response to their pessimism is so profound. He doesn't deny humanity's capacity for violence. He doesn't say, no, you're wrong. Instead, he points to a greater hidden potential. I know that which you do not know. And that potential, it's unlocked by knowledge, by our ability to learn, to reason, and to build new realities. So here's the big takeaway. This is not a simple straight line to some kind of utopia. It is messy, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But when we zoom out, the overarching trend across thousands of years is undeniable. It's an ever-expanding circle of empathy, cooperation, and peace. And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. We have already made the unthinkable happen, again and again. War between Florence and Siena is now unthinkable. War between Prussia and Bavaria is unthinkable. And today, war between France and Germany is unthinkable. Now, the challenge of ending war between all nations is for sure on a much bigger scale. But is it truly a different kind of challenge? History seems to suggest it might not be.